I would guess that the listeners are loving this right now because I asked you a pretty direct question and you took us on a journey. There was so much breadth in what you said. I don't know what it's like to be in your brain, but I'm going to make a guess for a second. The network in your mind is actually amazing, is quite special and unique, and how easily you connect one idea to another, to another, to another, to another. What might feel to others like a ping pong effect, to you, it's probably a neighboring idea that's like obviously connected to the other thing. It can be your superpower. And it can also be your kryptonite. And so figuring out how to hold it as your superpower and utilize that, therein lies the rub. And if you can do that, then you can do anything.
You're listening to the Genius Scouts podcast with Justin Oberman and Aaron Zakowski. Join us each week as we bring you exclusive conversations with the business leaders and innovators you need to know about, sharing the secrets that fuel their success and power their personal brands. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Genius Scouts podcast. Today, we're excited to be joined by Miriam Meima, a renowned executive coach, business psychologist, and facilitator with over 20 years of experience in leadership development. Starting her journey by shadowing consultants as a teenager, she's worked with powerhouse organizations like JetBlue, Clorox, Morgan Stanley, Nintendo, the Department of Defense, and the Nature Conservancy.
Yeah, Miriam's story is truly inspiring. She co-founded the 2 Million Leaders Project and was named to the Forbes Coaches Council in February 2020. She is also the co-founder of Everyday Leader, which is a company dedicated to empowering current and aspiring leaders worldwide with the skills and mindset to drive positive change. But that is not why I'm excited to have her on the podcast. Because as you know, Aaron, I am very skeptical of leadership and life coaches and coaches of any kind, despite the fact that I'm often called a coach. And whenever I meet one, I like to play a little game called Guess the Cohort or Guess the Influencer. Essentially, the game is to try to listen to them, sell you their services, and try to guess which coaching program or celebrity system they're using. And to get the game started, I always like to start by telling the coach that I am very skeptical of coaches. And Miriam surprised me by answering, "So am I." And she then spoke for 10 minutes, and in that time blew my mind 5 times. So I thought to myself, we have to have her on the podcast so she can do the same thing to our audience. So now, without any pressure at all, Miriam, welcome to Genius Scouts.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here. Yeah, no pressure at all. I was like, I spoke for 10 minutes. That doesn't sound like me, but.
Well, we spoke for 10 minutes.
Yeah, a bit more time today.
It was just dialogue.
In the dialogue, in that 10-minute dialogue, you blew my mind at least 5 times. And part of it has to do with, I think, your story. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how you came from doing, I guess what I would call like corporate counseling, right? Yep. In major Fortune 500 companies. And then something happened and, well, there's a whole mindset shift that happened. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So my story, there's a couple interesting things I think about my story. One is that it started super early. I mean, I was 13 years old when people started to tell me to become a business psychologist, which I think is an unusual experience for a 13-year-old. And I'm grateful to those that I was in the path of those adults and that they said something and that I knew to listen to them, because it really helped shape the trajectory of at least of my early education and some of my early career. So I'm grateful to them. And we could probably talk a lot about what the hell they were seeing in me so young that had me so randomly pursuing this for the entirety of my life and career. And yes, I was then in consulting and working with these cool companies and thinking like, boom, I figured it out early in my career. This is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And then surprise, life had other plans. So in 2008, I was in the process of going through a divorce. And you know what? You don't start a marriage hoping it ends in divorce. It's just not what happens. So that comes with all sorts of emotional feelings, especially because I'd promised myself I wasn't going to get divorced because, my parents got the whole thing. So it's going through divorce. And then it was weeks later that my mom passed away quite unexpectedly. So the combo of the two had me in a state where I was trying to, I guess, source sanity, and all of my strategies of basically being intellectual, analyzing, learning, reading, turning to books, turning to education, none of that was working for me. And so I hired my first coach, and she was incredibly helpful to me in developing a whole new skill set, which is this thing like emotions and intuition and all this stuff that I really had not known to access previously. And so that was really probably the inflection point that led me to pursue leadership coaching as something that I wanted to understand better. So I did a 2-year program in that while finishing my master's, and then basically decided to combine all of these things, what I had experienced, my work as a consultant, and then my work as a coach, into being an executive coach. And first I thought, there's no way anyone's going to pay me for this. But I'm going to try. I'm going to prove myself right that no one will pay me for this, because I don't want to look back and wonder. And so I launched my business, and much to my surprise, it was about 3 weeks later that I had a full practice. And so I've been kind of off and running since.
So maybe tell us a little bit, for those who don't know, what does an executive coach do? I mean, why will an executive of a company come to you? What situation are they in that makes them think they need this? And what do you do to help them move past whatever that situation is?
Most people, if they've never worked with an executive coach before and we're having a conversation, I'm so excited for them, because whether they work with me or someone else, they will, in my experience, never regret that decision to work with an executive coach. So what they're getting with an executive coach is a confidant. So someone with enough business context to understand what the heck is going on in their world, so that they can talk about everything that they probably are talking to their spouse or best friends about, but their spouse and best friends probably don't really want to be talking about that much, like business concerns. But also I am a third party. So I will call people on their shit, and I will also be their friend and confidant and help them understand what are the strengths that they're bringing to the challenges in front of them. So they usually, in working with an executive coach, you're going to better understand yourself. You're going to be able to better, like I said, for myself, I was trying to source sanity. That's a lot of what I do with my clients, is help them stay sane while they are delivering on the expectations that other people have of them in their role, which is usually very difficult. And so figuring out how to be effective in that role is what I'm helping each of my clients do.
So it sounds like it's more personal, emotional than strategic, actually helping them with doing their job. It's just helping them deal with the weight of the pressure.
No, it's definitely both. So I'm often strategizing how to have hard conversations. So I'm not going to be an advisor to them, but I am going to help them figure out what is the data that I need to collect? How can I do that quickly? What's my decision-making framework here? Who do I need to be bringing into the process? Should I be hiring? Should I be firing? So those are very tactical things that we are working through together.
But one of the things that always bothered me about leadership coaches and personal coaches and whatever you want to call them, life coaches, is that every time I would speak with one, or maybe start working with one or whatever, like everything seemed kind of very formulaic. And in your story, you talked about the limitations of the traditional intellectual tools, and how you realized that during your own transformative experience. How did this realization, how does it shape your coaching style?
Yeah, I don't believe all information can be processed rationally. I think that there's true value in understanding, well, first knowing what our emotions are, because a lot of people are making emotion or decisions from an emotional place, but they're pretending that it's a rational choice. And I think that's super dangerous. And so it's like, yeah, we're going to have an emotional reaction. Let's deal with that first, get through it, so then we can get back to a neutral place and be able to accurately assess what's in front of us. But if you can do that, you can also tap into your gut instincts. And a lot of the great leaders that I've worked with and that we see that we read about in the headlines, they're trusting their gut, and they're unapologetic about that, which I love. Sometimes that they're finding ways to back into it with information, but other times they're just saying, I know we need to do this. I need y'all to trust me. Let's rally around this idea. Let's go for it.
I'm trying to understand what the experience was that I experienced when I said, this is somebody that is very different. This might actually be a leadership coach that I might actually hire, because
you're like, you're not saying it yet, Miriam. Nothing is new or different yet.
Yeah.
Like, I love it.
It's
hilarious.
It's maybe if we backtrack and you go a little bit more into that story of, well, do you remember the moment when that hit you? When it hit you that the intellectual tools are not going to help, like all the books, everything, all the theory that I read, it's not going to help me here?
It's a sustained moment. So do I remember it? Yes, but it wasn't a moment as in a certain day, and the clock struck, X. It was months of agony, months of feeling like I don't know how to get myself out of this. And I've never been in a situation where I didn't know how to get myself out of this or through this. That I was hitting a wall or hitting a ceiling, and it was a terrible feeling of helplessness. And I think that's very common. I think most of us that kind of continue to push, whether it's hopefully not through difficult life circumstances, maybe it's through being in a profession where we're extremely challenged, but we will probably, if we're people who want to achieve greatness in our lives, we're going to come up against those walls and against those ceilings and feel that sense of helplessness. And then it's like, okay, what are you going to do then? And I didn't have answers. So I was kind of in a place of desperation and wanting to think outside the box about how to do it.
I think what I didn't sense in you is, I feel like a lot of coaches and a lot of leaders sort of push or pitch a kind of toxic positivity, where, it's like, oh, turn all your obstacles into opportunities, and turn, and find the good in everything. And while that while that's not necessarily bad advice, if it seems like you discovered this because something happened to you. Do you think that people need to go into the cave that they fear the most in order to move forward? Or do you think it's possible to avoid conflict and move forward?
I think that most people don't proactively build the skill set that might help them when or if they come up against that thing, and probably they will. Again, we don't hope that or wish that on anyone, and most people they're going to find themselves in that position. So we can very much prep ourselves to remain resilient, to be able to access resilience in those moments when we most need it. And so in that sense, yeah, go into that fucking cave and see what's there for you. But don't do it because it's fun or it's necessary to live a good life today. Do it because you might need to know yourself better than you do already in order to make it through in the future. So it's kind of a strategic personal development thing. But those people are not calling me. To your earlier question, Aaron, those people are not calling me. People are calling me in a state of desperation when they're feeling like they don't know how to do it themselves.
Do what themselves?
Find their way through, maintain sanity, and be effective at the same time. It feels like an either or in most cases. People are saying, should I stay in this job or should I leave? I'm a founder or I'm a C-level exec, and I feel pulled in every direction, and I don't even know why am I even doing this anymore. That's usually when people call me.
Can you give some examples of how your approach is different than other people's approach when someone comes to you with that kind of thing? Let me give you a scenario. I have multiple interests, and my problem is that I am always just getting into something, and then something else comes along, and I can't commit, and it's hurting my company because I keep pivoting and moving and doing things. So and I got to stop.
That's why I come in every day and yell at you.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this a hypothetical or is this real life?
I mean, I just grabbed one from real life. I'm trying to get a free session out of you. I
think that would make for a much more interesting conversation if it were not hypothetical.
It's not hypothetical.
Okay, fine. It's not hypothetical.
New ideas and shiny objects.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's not talk about it. Let's show it.
Yeah. All right. All right. So you love shiny objects, and chasing them gives you what?
I wouldn't necessarily say I like shiny objects. I just have a very overactive mind, and I read a lot, and I get interested in a lot of things and approaches, and it could be about the same thing. It could be like, okay, I'm building this company. Let's do it this way. And then I read a book and I learn about a counterintuitive way of doing it. I'm like, oh, let's do it this way. Or I happen to reread Friedrich Nietzsche and I'm like, oh, let's do personal branding this way. That's never been done. But, and I just keep sort of doing that. And it drives Aaron crazy.
Truth.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, I have some tendencies like that a little bit, but I also believe that the path to success is by picking a path and just sticking to it.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be particularly tough on you if you have those tendencies too, because it's the two co-founders, right? The two of you are co-founders.
We're together, but I think I've moved partially through working with coaches, in fact, in the past that I've had, who have helped me to recognize that, changing paths and second guessing and all that has been some of the reasons why why I haven't achieved more in my life and my career. And so now I'm at a point where I think I have overcome those things, and I'm ready, together with Justin, just to say, like, Justin, go be creative, go be the genius, go come up with all those ideas, but I'm going to rein you in. We're going to keep running in one direction, and we'll utilize those ideas, but we're going to keep moving in one direction and with one major strategy, at least for some long periods of time.
Yeah. And as long as Justin's doing what seems to you, Aaron, is too much of that, of the divergent thinking, and then you won't be able to do any of it. That is how it works in business relationships. So if Justin was staying the course constantly, you could indulge some of that. So I hear you that you feel like you've kind of evolved in your life where you have those tendencies to pursue these more divergent paths, but you also can stick to the thing. But even for you, it's going to be fun to think about some of those new ideas and how to diverge a little bit from the past. But as long as Justin's doing what you perceive to be too much of it, you won't let yourself do any of it because you feel like you can't. You have to be his counterbalance, and you'll start to resent him for it. So not only are you frustrated that he is doing the thing that drives you crazy, but it will start to erode your ability to feel fulfilled in your work. So it's good for you, Justin, to make sure you're doing some of this for Aaron, of just like, oh, I'll do the Aaron thing today. I'll hold the course so that he can be the creative guy with the new ideas. And it's probably tangential to the ideas that are already in motion versus something that is perpendicular. I can't tell, Justin, if the things you get stimulated by, how distinct they are from the things that are already in motion. What would you say? It's like
from what
dreamily?
If you see behind me, there's a statue, a statue of David, an obese statue of David, and it broke, and someone was going to throw it away, and I was like, oh no, that's great. Because it's like iconoclastic, and I have a very bad tendency to just be iconoclastic all the time. It's part of my creative strategy, which is to always begin with, what's the stupidest thing we can do? When I first learn about something, like when I first learned about advertising, okay, I went and I studied, someone said, study this book, Hey Whipple Squeeze this. And okay, now read Ogilvy on advertising. Okay, I read it, I got it. And then my mind immediately went to, who's the most radical person who says the most radical things? And someone was like, oh, well, that's Howard Gossage. So I went and I read that, and I was like, oh, that's it. Like, I immediately just go there. And I think part of it is because I want the full spectrum, but also because I have this philosophy in life, which is that most things are counterintuitive. The way to solve problems most of the time, for me at least, has been always to just take the counterintuitive approach, which has gotten me into a lot of trouble sometimes. But it's
I would guess that the listeners are loving this right now because I asked you a pretty direct question and you took us on a journey. It was like there was so much breadth in what you
That's what
said.
every conversation with Justin is.
Yes, yes. So it feels to me like in your brain, I don't know what it's like to be in your brain, but I'm going to make a guess for a second that everything is connected to everything else. Like the network in your mind is actually amazing. It is quite special and unique, and how easily you connect one idea to another, to another, to another, to another. That for you to stop that, what might feel to others like a ping pong effect, to you, it's probably a neighboring idea that's like obviously connected to the other thing. Does that resonate with you? Is that what it feels like in your brain sometimes?
I feel challenged not to respond with my typical way, but I guess I should in this sense. There is a scene, not to harp too much on astrology, but I'm an Aquarius, and
Me too. When was your birthday?
February 10th.
Oh wait, that was recently. Happy birthday!
Thank you. And what you're describing, I think, tends to be like a stereotypical Aquarius. The reason I say this is because Abraham Lincoln was an Aquarius as well, and I've studied his life extensively, and I find a lot of similarity in the way that he thinks. Not to compare myself with Abraham Lincoln, I'm just talking about his thought process. But in the movie with Daniel Day-Lewis, there's this scene where he is trying to get the 14th Amendment passed, and he hires these.
I'm not going to interrupt you.
Wait, no, I just got to say. But... So he says something, and then somebody responds. Like he says something that no one understands, but one person does, and he says, "Oh, because of this, this, and this," and he goes, "Yes, thank you. What a pleasure it is to be understood." That I resonated with that. It's very rare that I feel understood. See, like right now, even like it's very rare that I feel understood because my mind is makes these connections pretty easily.
Right? Yeah, so easily. Yeah, it's very rare. It's very rare. And it's something that it can be your superpower, and it can also be your kryptonite. And so figuring out how to hold it as your superpower and utilize that, that's the art. Therein lies the rub. And if you can do that, then you can do anything. And so the thing is, when you decide to be in business partnership with someone, I feel like that was a wise choice, because now there's two of you. And now you get to figure out, how do you collaborate, and what can you delegate or defer to the other person? What can you outsource essentially to the other person? So if your mind is more of a network, then linear thinking is going to be almost inaccessible to you, because A plus B equals red in your mind. So it's like if A plus B equals red and Aaron's trying to get to C, then kind of figuring out, how do you stay in one conversation, and how do you feel like, how can you meet other people in the way that their minds work? Because knowing that the way yours works is rare. So how do you do that with Aaron? If your goal is not to actually follow what's happening in your mind, but to let go of what's happening in your mind and just understand what's happening in Aaron's mind, how would you go about that?
The same way that I always have with these things, which is that when I worked in advertising, I'm a creative, I'm a copywriter. So give me a tight brief and I'll work with that. And so it's the same thing. It's like, tell me what you need to apply my way of thinking to. And then I'll do that.
Yeah, that's often the conversation that we have, where I'll come, okay, here's the strategy, here's the framework we need to put together to go to market with whatever, with the podcast, with client work, with the marketing thing we might do for ourselves. And, I put together a plan, I put together a process, SOPs, all those things. And I come to Justin and I explain, he's like, great, just tell me what I have to do. And then we go from there. And sometimes
And for me, the hardest temptation is to not question the strategy, because I'm a generalist thinker, and and I'm very much into like first principle thinking. And if I feel like the strategy is off, I will. It's very hard for me not to say anything, but that's like the part that I've spent years working on.
Well, I guess where I've spent, it's funny. Well, I guess Miriam's taken over the host role of this podcast today.
No, some things can't be explained. Some things need to be shown.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've come to that similar stage. I tend to be the perfectionist, and I like ideas, but where I think I've grown past it, or I'm trying to grow past it with the help of coaches that I've worked with who have been phenomenally beneficial, is recognizing that, done is better than perfect, that there's no perfect strategy that's going to be implemented. And I think I've missed so many opportunities in my career because I started a process and then I had a better idea and then I skipped to the better idea and abandoned the first idea. And then I had a better idea and then I jumped to the next, and then nothing ever got accomplished, at least not in the way that I think it could have been to achieve a much bigger outcome. And so I think where we are now is we've got some good plans. Genius Scouts there's definitely a need for what we're doing in personal branding. There's a good strategies we have in place, and we have to just recognize, like, let's do some of them and let's do them imperfectly. Let's do them pretty darn good, and we will accomplish most of what we want to do. But if we keep jumping strategies and trying to go for perfect, we're not going to get anywhere.
I can tell though. So this is partly my training, but tell me if I'm wrong here, Aaron. But it just feels like you're having to hold that more than is authentic to you. Like you are having to hold those boundaries more than I think serves you in the long term. So I would worry about you getting burnt out in like 18 months if this is the sustained dynamic. So
I would sustain 18 months of staying on one path because I've never accomplished that before. I very much feel, for me, it's where I want to develop as an entrepreneur and as a professional, is being able to just stay that consistency of the path. And that's hard for me, but that's my personal growth that I'm going through. I don't have nearly as many ideas bouncing through my head as Justin does. I'm in awe of the way that his brain works, and it's beautiful and frustrating at the same time the way he thinks. So I respect it a lot. But for me, it's my goal in myself is learn to be consistent and create the process and follow through. And even if that means I have to delegate and not be doing it to myself. So sometimes my way of being able to create differences, so I don't have to be on the same course all the time, is create that path, but then delegate it to other people for actually the implementation day after day and the repetitive things, so that I can start expanding, moving in the same direction that we set from the beginning, but accomplishing more because more things have been delegated. And then I can stay with new things that all complement the original plan without me having to do too much of the repetitive work.
It's totally going to work. Yeah, absolutely. You can sustain more than 18. Easy. What I'm saying is I want you to have Justin's support in staying the course. I don't want you to feel like you have to, of the two of you, be the only one staying the course. So I wonder how you, Justin, can help him. And I don't know if it's the two of you need to anchor on some like shared commitments, like, yeah, done is better than perfect, or here's the result that we're driving towards and we're going to work towards it together. Do you know what works for you, Justin? If you think about all the things you've accomplished in your life, what helped you kind of stay the course? What is helpful to you?
I think you're going to find the answer to that question pretty interesting. I have found that I am most successful in my life whenever I not stop doing things for other people, but because if what I'm doing is for other people, then I'm still doing things for other people. But when I'm a little bit more selfish, and I don't know how that's an answer to this question, I'm not, when I get into something, I'm slow to get into it, but once I'm in and committed, and stubbornly so. It took me years before I accepted the fact that social media was the new advertising channel. I was just stuck on TV and print, and I was just stubborn. It was slow to get in. I think I answered it before when I said, give me the strategy and let me apply it to that with all the limitations. And the limitation could be that I don't think the strategy's right. So I'm like, okay, well, how can I make this work anyway? And not verbalize it, like not be like, well, the strategy's wrong and this and that or whatever, but just go and do the work and let the work speak for itself. I think I've always had a bad habit of doing that.
Justin, I might suggest that the way that I think you perform the best is where the strategy involves and allows for creativity, because you always have to be creative. You always have to be playing with ideas. So if the strategy is built such that it requires creativity, such as posting on LinkedIn every day, where every day you have a brand new opportunity to express a thought in a creative new way based on a book you read, based on a conversation you had, something along those lines. If that's the strategy, then you can stick with that because you love the creativity. But it has to be a strategy that allows for that outlet for you, I think.
My read is it's not the creativity. It might look like that on the outside, but it's the allowing the, what seems to most of us like divergent thinking to be expressed. So, I mean, I guess we could label that creativity,
I call that
but
creativity.
it's like, yeah,
But
it's like that stimulation. So maybe we call it creativity, but I think more often creativity is like artistic, where with you, Justin, it doesn't feel so much like art. It feels like you, like noticing after all of the inputs that you're holding in your mind, like what gets fired and allowing that to have an outlet. And I hear you, Aaron. It's like that works great when Justin has that. It's okay though to expect him to every once in a while hold back. And I love what you already said it, Justin. You're like, I don't have to say out loud, that I'm questioning the strategy. I can have the thought, keep it to myself, and say, Aaron, what do you need from me? That is great. That is great. And then what are you going to get stubborn about as it relates to Genius Scouts, Justin? What's the thing that you're going to just like get stubborn about and stay the course on?
The thing that I'm stubborn about regarding myself is that I very strongly believe in service, in a service business. Meaning, I understand we can do cohorts and we can create an online class and stuff like that. But I truly believe that there are people like me who, and probably your clients, right, who need somebody that they're going to meet with every week that's going to keep them accountable, or that's even just going to do things for them. And the big thing right now is, that you should move away from that because it's too much work, and you can make more money and have more free time by having a course or a cohort or this or that and all that stuff. And it's not that I feel like if I created that, I would rip people off the way I've been ripped off by those things and whatnot. It's just that I truly believe that the best solution is always a service solution. And I also just like it because I like talking with people, and I like, I guess, what you're doing to us right now with your skills, with your life experience, with all the intellectual stuff that you have that was then thrown into the crucible, right, of your life, and you're brilliantly showing this right now. I just want to remind the listeners, right, like, this is what I'm talking about. This is like, she's blown my mind already like 5 times in this conversation. I've never met somebody like you that's done that. And I think that, because, everybody thinks that they're more complicated than they are probably, but I do the same thing for people where I'm trying to make people divergent thinkers, or not. If I can't make them divergent thinkers, I'm trying to take their thoughts and make them more divergent, right, online, and show them how they can think this way and whatnot. And I love doing that. I just love showing people how they can be more creative. Like, it's in them. You can do it. And so I think that that's something that, despite the fact that we are creating a cohort, the way I see it is we're doing that so that I can help more people. I think that the service part of it and my goal for that is something that I'm pretty stubborn about, because awesome. I can't see myself I don't know what I would do with myself if I wasn't actively helping people every day. Mm-hmm. Just like selling a digital course and speaking about these things to a video camera and then uploading it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I heard a few things. One, being of service, but I think that means not only to the world and to your clients, but also to Aaron. So if you commit to doing something, making sure that you're following through because that matters to you. I think I heard you say that.
Yeah. Aaron's a client too. I coach him.
It's true.
Yeah.
Hopefully a little more than
And
that, but
what's that?
hopefully a little more than a client. No,
Definitely.
we've agreed that he's coaching me in the same way that he coaches his clients in terms of content and thinking as well to help me with that process. Because
as a business strategy, because your business part, I mean, I don't know if it's that cold. I don't think it is, but it's smart. I do think though that's just in what we want to find an on-off switch for is your ability to help people to be divergent thinkers. Because that's the more you're doing it externally in the business, hopefully that gets satiated. And then you won't feel like you need to do that all the time internally with the strategy because you're exhausting that muscle externally.
I'm exhausting everything doing that. Yes.
Yeah. And that hopefully you find value in turning it off sometimes and just kind of being told what to do. It sounds like Aaron, I think it's so impressive that you're willing and able, and I can definitely tell that you've had sustained effort in figuring out how to take your natural state and help it work for you. And I can't think honestly of a better partnership of someone that feels like you're able to translate for Justin, you're able to relate to him and also help him. And for yourself, it's lean into both of you. And it's a great name for the business, Genius Scouts, because you both are needing to access I think of genius as your unique brilliance. It's like the combination of your life experience, what you're naturally passionate about, what you're curious about, what you're capable of. All of that combines to be your unique brilliance or your genius. And here you are, both hopefully expressing that. And I do think, Aaron, the more you get to just a little bit more permission to let go, the more, Justin, you hold the line a little bit more, then Aaron can relax just a little bit more and feel a little even more creative, like 10% more creative. Then this is like, wow, watch out, world.
Well, this has been amazing. And this is not something that I think a typical life coach or leadership coach that hasn't been through some sort of crucible. I mean, I'm getting, you are probably not the only one, right, that became a leadership coach or because of going through life experiences, but there's just difficult life experiences, but there's just sort of a kind of empathy in what you just said. And you know what, just some things in this world can't be described and they have to be shown. And I'm glad that you just showed that. Because it really, to me, demonstrates the difference of you compared to most of the leadership people that I've seen on there. You know, there's like some woman, some leadership person that comes up on my feed all the time, and she's been doing like the major podcast round. I haven't seen her on Joe Rogan yet, but each one of her clips are like hacks. It's like, oh, you know, smile with your forehead, you know, like, because that makes people do this, and or you know, use these words instead of these words. And I've heard you say those things too, but it's not your main thing, is it?
Although what's interesting is that, I mean, my main thing is helping people recognize what makes them unique and how to express that in the role that they've chosen to be authentic and effective at the same time. That's like the core of it. That's what I want for everyone. And sometimes those little snippets are how we put it into action. People are like, that sounds great, but what the fuck, what does that mean? You know, it's like, help me, like, what do I hold on to start to put that into action? So that's where sometimes little hacks can be helpful.
I think it's something else though, if you don't mind me saying this, and I'm curious what your reaction to it is. I think that for whatever reason, the combination, like you must have been like really intellectual, right? Like really learned about all these things and probably really good at applying them even before you went through what you went through. And then after you went through them, it was like you just took those ingredients, like I said, and threw them in the crucible and was able to add the spices and stuff like that. But what I think that actually helps you do is, Aaron, you know, besides everything he just said, right, is that I kind of know that I'm a difficult person, right? Like to work with, I always have been. You know, even my wife says like I'm very hard to read, hard to figure out because of the reasons that I think you mentioned. Therapists too. I'm not a big fan of therapy. Most of them give up on me. To be honest, I go the first time I see a therapist, I look at their books, I see which books are worn the most, and I go and I read them. And then I just start playing, with, like sort of guiding them, like hearing what they want to, it's a thing. And I think that there are a lot of people like me, difficult people, who, for whatever reason, find themselves in leadership roles, and no one really can help them. But there's something about your approach that I think you've cracked in working with difficult people, or let me put it another way, people who view themselves as difficult people, which might be two different things. And I'm just curious what you think about that.
I think that's absolutely true. Yeah. People who have felt very alone in it, like they really haven't been able to source that sense of connection or collaboration or partnership with everybody or anybody. Either they hold things back, or they expect more of themselves, or they're kind of they push themselves consistently to be at the forefront. Those are some of my favorite people to work with. You're calling it difficult people, but I think difficult sometimes is also because the way that you work, other people don't know what to do with it. Or it sounds like your wife is like, doesn't know the way you, I don't know, the way you communicate, or the way you live. Something is like,
she seems like sometimes like I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, or that was so obscure, or, I don't get the connection that you're making. So my sarcastic New York humor. So I think people who have multiple interests, people who are, I guess, divergent thinkers, lateral thinkers, the natural Edward de Bonos of the world, and the, who feel very alone, and have maybe tried a leadership coach or a life coach, and it's always failed them. I think they should go to you. And I didn't mean this to be like an advertising thing, but
I'm like, wait, careful now. I don't know. This is definitely not intended to be like a sales pitch by any means.
Like I said in the very beginning, you blew my mind. There's something very different going on, and I'm like, we have to have her on the podcast in order to figure out what it is. And I think I'm figuring out what it is. At least, but it could be that's just me. But if someone like me is saying, like, ask Aaron, like, when's the last time you ever heard me say anything about a coach? It's like, oh yeah,
I think every coach or influencer that we bring up in conversation, he finds a way to tear them apart. Oh, they're great, but look at these things they've done, or here's where they're cheating people or something. So yes, I think that's true.
Oh, they're using this method, they're using that method. Yeah. And I can't say that about you, because you would fully admit, it's like, yeah, I've learned all these methods, but everything that you're talking about is coming from life and your experience, and getting on a plane, and where you went to South America, right?
Yeah, I sold everything. So when I figured out, I was like stuck. So I sold everything and got a one-way ticket to Managua, Nicaragua, and just kind of traveled for a while.
Is that good advice for some people?
That's the way I think of it. It's like I'm trying my absolute best to help people stay, just shy of needing to sell everything, and get divorced, and buy a one-way ticket. It's totally one of the options in the option set. And sometimes I've supported people doing going nuclear, or really pulling the eject button in their lives. But most of the time we can slow that down and catch it sooner, and figure out how to set ourselves up to have a life we actually want to live, and a job we actually want to go to.
Miriam, I know you have a hard stop pretty soon. I want to respect that. Maybe we'll jump to some of our wrap up conclusion questions. We have a leadership speed round of questions that we like to do. We'll actually ask you a few of those, and then move on with your day. Because this I'll tell you from my point of view that this podcast did not go the way we planned. We had a whole list of questions and ideas that we came prepared to talk to you about, And I'm really glad that we didn't get a chance to talk about them and ask you those questions, because the direction this went, I think, was so much more valuable.
This was so amazing.
Great.
I'm going to go and cry somewhere afterwards. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll come over and give you a hug.
There you go. There you go.
I have my emotional support dog right here. So
That's true.
Okay.
just cuddle a little bit. Right, Obi?
Justin, I'll let you go first. Well, we got a big list of quick questions over here. Why don't you pick the ones that excite you the most?
Well, no, it's a lightning round. We can just go through them real quick. Ready? No, we don't have the time? Okay. I say authentic leadership. You say...
Hell yeah.
All right. Finish this sentence. The future of leadership is...
Pausing because I want to give a really honest answer, and I'm still hung up on my last one. I'm like, authentic leadership is
That was great.
half the battle. And the future of leadership is knowing how to integrate AI into what we want to accomplish and be people leaders at the same time.
That's a whole other podcast. We're going to have to have you
on,
yeah.
Done this.
We're going to have you on again. Chris, let's make sure we get Miriam on again. Whole episode just on AI and leadership. That's a really good topic. Hot take. One thing most leaders get wrong about emotional intelligence is...
It's a rubric you can learn once and use for the rest of your life.
If a leader is struggling with team morale, the first thing they should do is...
Look in the mirror.
Okay. Which fictional character would make the best CEO? That's not currently a CEO.
Fictional character. For some reason, I'm only thinking about cartoons, but that's not the question. It's fictional character, right? Like, why am I only thinking cartoons when I close my eyes? Fictional character. Pass.
Okay. If you could snap your fingers and give every leader one superpower right now, what would it be?
To know how to recognize unique strength in everyone they meet.
Got it. If you could go back in time and coach any historical leader, who would it be?
Does tomorrow count? Because there's some current leaders that I would really like to coach, although I'm not sure how coachable they are. So
I think those are fair answers.
Yeah. I would say every leader who did not have a clear value set is part of like who I would choose. So anyone in power that does not have a clearly defined value set that aligns with the good of humanity from my biased point of view.
You've just piqued my curiosity. You can't think of like any particular one from history? Andrew Johnson, did he not have a value set?
I know this is not what you're asking me, and we are going to stop, but I actually trust that everything's happened and that's okay. Like I really could I have coached anyone? Yes. Do I feel the need to have? No, not at all. Some people are going to do what they're going to do, and I'm not going to disagree with it, and that's okay.
Okay.
I don't feel the need to influence that.
Obi.
Yeah.
Okay. One last question, which is, what book would you recommend every leader read right now? Or you could say what book you're reading now.
I'm not that prescriptive, so I'm going to take another pass. I know that's boring, and I may circle back and say, here's the one book. But no, I would say the one book that every leader should read is the one that feels indulgent. Rather than going for the one that you feel like is going to give you the answer, read the book that feels indulgent, that you're curious about, and trust that you will find leadership lessons in that book.
Is it because you're curious about it, so it must be something that you need to work on?
Or just entertained by, trust that if you care about being a better leader, whatever you're reading is going to help you become a better leader.
I love that answer. That's in there. That's such a great answer.
Miriam, thank you. This has been phenomenal. Yes. Where can listeners go to learn more about you or to connect with you?
Everydayleader.com.
Everydayleader.com. Thank you. Thank you so much, Miriam. It's been a real pleasure, and we're going to have you on the podcast again to talk about that AI thing, because that was super interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. And thank you, listeners. And I hope you all have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Genius Scouts podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes. And if you're ready to take your personal brand to the next level, visit geniusscouts.com.